everyone, and welcome to Meet the Press. I'm your host, Vivian Tien, and today's segment will be on the Woodstock Music Festival. Right now, we're going to go to an on-site interview with reporter Jessie Glantz.
Now we're here at Woodstock, founded by Michael Lang, John Roberts, Joel Rosenman, and Artie Kornfield, which was a music festival lasting from August 15th to August 18th.
Roberts and Rosenman were the two main financiers of the festival. After putting an ad in the paper for young men with unlimited capital looking for interesting, legitimate investment opportunities and business propositions, Lang, who had already organized the Miami Pop Festival, contacted them both, and the rest is history.
Their idea was to have a music and art festival with a smaller venue featuring big artists such as Bob Dylan and the band.
But little did they know that their small festival would turn into an event with 500,000 attendees and become well known throughout America.
They intended to charge $18 for reserved tickets and $24 for at-the-door tickets, but people found out about the concert and attended anyway, with or without a ticket.
They expected a maximum of 50,000 people to attend, but they were definitely not prepared for this amount of people to attend the festival.
But where would the festival be held for so many people? Problems arose concerning their original venues, so they decided to have the concert at Max Yasgur's 600-acre dairy farm.
As people arrived at the dairy farm for the festival, as expected, a massive amount of traffic was involved. So, many people decided just to leave their cars and walk the rest of the way to the festival.
As soon as people arrived, the organizers saw how extremely unprepared they were. They had not brought enough food, water, medicine, or functioning toilets to the event. There was almost always a 2-hour wait to use the restroom.
Rosenman and Roberts had considered having rice and water imported via helicopter. Many performing artists also had to arrive by helicopter since there was so much traffic. Back to you, Vivian.
Thanks for that great interview, Jessie. Now that we've heard about the Woodstock Music Festival, it's time for an in-depth Meet the Press discussion about the evolving youth counterculture. With me, I have critic Risa Wan and a member of this youth movement, Renee Seto. Once again, my name is Vivian Tien, and I'll serve as moderator to this discussion. So Risa, Renee, many refer to this movement as the era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Do you think that accurately represents the counterculture?
Well, Vivian, as a group we are often recognized as people searching for new experiences. While we all enjoy the music and other aspects, they do not define us. We are trying to create peace and love in the world, and these are just means to that goal.
I believe that it does. However, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll has impacted America in a negative light, as hippie culture has mainstreamed drug culture and catalyzed social decay.
Risa, some other critics claim that this culture is simply a phase of rebellious youth searching to defy social standards placed upon them during childhood. Do you tend to agree with this assessment?
Vivian, many teenagers have run away from home to join this popular group that promotes freedom and independence from authority, alienating the older generation and disrupting the traditional family structure. Many young people are not marrying, claiming that marriage is irrelevant. Divorce rates have reached an all-time high, and premarital sex has also become a popular pastime despite the dangers involved.
Renee, what is your response to people who believe this?
Well, Vivian, this is a very narrow-minded view of our culture. We're all about coming together and celebrating peace and naturality. Most of us have retained our previous social positions, but we as a whole have become enlightened and influenced through our interests promoting love and happiness.
Interesting. Now, Risa, you mentioned the drug culture in a previous response. How do you think that the counterculture has impacted this?
I believe that through the viewpoints of these people, using recreational drugs such as LSD is perfectly acceptable in the quest to achieve some kind of all-accepting societal group. In fact, in 1963, upon the arrival of hippies in California, Owsley Stanley became the first multimillionaire drug dealer. In 1966, when California legalized LSD, hippies staged a gathering called the Love Pageant Rally in the Golden Gate Park, where they protested against the new law by putting LSD tablets on their tongues as police forces watched. Not only was this a disruption to society, but showed that this group believes themselves to be above the law, when they clearly are not. This encouraged civil disobedience has led to an increase in the number of protests across the nation.
Now, No, Vivian, don't believe everything you hear. Psychoactive drugs like LSD have allowed us to become enlightened and truly embrace our cause. These drugs don't inhibit us. They allow us to expand the human consciousness. They've also allowed us to musically embrace our culture. Great musicians like Jefferson Airplane, Iron Butterfly, Quicksilver Messenger Service, The Grateful Dead, British bands like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin have started using their music to emulate the euphoria of a high, and we've dubbed this style acid rock. Well-known bands have started using these references as well, such as the Beatles' Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Strawberry Alarm Clock's Incense and Peppermints, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience's Purple Haze. Hallucinogens have also drastically altered the media and art industries in new and exciting, unique ways. Everyone, it's time for a change.
So, back to current events. How much do you feel the war in Vietnam has influenced the development of the counterculture?
Actually, Vivian, it's more of a matter of how counterculture has influenced support for the war in Vietnam. Several protests against the war have been staged by the youth generation, commonly known as hippies, including the mass burning of draft cards in New York City in 1965. Several very concerning incidents happened only last year in 1968, in which a group of 4,000 protesters attempted to ransack the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., ensuing in police violence. Furthering the violence of anti-war demonstrations and protests, a massive riot at Columbia University took place in response to the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, and police forces were necessary to subdue it, since the protesters had shut down the campus and employed violent means in order to make their point, which is completely contrary to the peace and love front.
And Renee, what is your response to allegations of the so-called peace protests resulting in more violence than peace?
Well, Vivian, when people talk about violence and rioting, it's usually in reference to the Chicago Democratic National Convention in 1968. And you know what? In all honesty, this was no way the fault of the protesters. Our expression of speech and opinions was met with thousands of police, National Guardsmen, and even federal troops. At the end of the day, us protesters were not even participating in the violence. The police indiscriminately attacked us. More than 1,000 people were injured at this single event. Our peace protest has caused no violence. We are the victims seeking to express ourselves in ways guaranteed to us by our constitutional rights. We want to promote peace, love, and acceptance. The connection with violence is simply not there.
Wow, what polarized opinions. So getting back to the focus of this discussion, to you, did Woodstock embody the positive or negative aspects of the counterculture?
Well, Vivian, to me, Woodstock really represents what our culture is all about. Unity, peace, and a celebration of music. The mood of the entire event is accepting, free, and really embodies the positivity that we're trying to infuse in our culture.
Though there have been many detrimental factors in events introduced by the counterculture movement, I will have to say that Woodstock is one of the more positive. Taking into account the mass gathering of 400,000 people, the relative lack of violence is very impressive. And though order was breached due to failure to pay the admission originally charged by the organizers of the event, it seemed to be a relatively successful event in terms of spreading the peace and music, which the counterculture movement advertises.
Thank you for that enlightening discussion, Reese and Renee. To our audience, we ask that you re-examine your opinion of the counterculture movement. Thank you and good night.